As the first rays of dawn broke across the land, the kingdoms of Erinda, scarred by the tumult of war, began to stir. The air was thick with the scent of new life, of wild flowers pushing their way through the ashes, and the soft hum of hope that whispered on the winds. Though the war was over, its echoes lingered in the hearts of those who had fought and sacrificed, especially Dorian Ardent, whose bravery and sacrifice had changed the very course of their world. Serafini stood on the balcony of the newly restored palace of Solara, looking out over the city. It was a city still rebuilding, its walls scarred from the siege, its streets filled with those trying to piece together what was lost. But in the distance, the spires of the kingdom's heart rose against the horizon, proud and strong once again. It was a symbol of resilience, a living testament to the bravery of the people and the sacrifices that had been made. She could feel the weight of Dorian's absence. The fire that had once burned within him, the phoenix's fire, had returned to the earth, leaving him a man, mortal once more, but still indelibly marked by the experience. Serafini knew she could not let the kingdom's struggle be in vain. She would not allow his sacrifice to fade into the history books like so many others had. Her thoughts were interrupted by the quiet footsteps behind her. Elysia Stormburn, the powerful elemental mage who had aided them in their journey, approached, her expression somber. "Your Majesty, the High Council is waiting," Elysia said softly. The mage had been a vital part of the rebuilding efforts. Her knowledge of the old magics used to help fortify the kingdom's defenses and restore the balance of the elements. Serafini nodded, but her gaze lingered on the horizon, as if searching for something. Elysia stood with her for a moment, her own gaze shifting between Serafini and the sky. "I often wonder if peace can ever truly take root in a land so steeped in magic and blood," Elysia mused quietly. "The phoenix's fire is gone, but there are still shadows in the hearts of men." Seraphine's eyes narrowed, a hint of determination crossing her face. "That is why we must rebuild, not just our kingdoms, but the very souls of our people. We will show them that peace is worth fighting for not just in battle, but in every choice we make. That is the only way we can honor Dorian's sacrifice." The High Council of Erinda convened in the newly rebuilt Hall of the Sun, a place that once radiated the warmth and power of Solara's legacy. Now it was a symbol of their unity and determination to rebuild. But the air was tense as the leaders of the neighboring kingdoms sat at the round table, their faces etched with the weariness of years of war. King Erinda of Volunda, a stern but pragmatic ruler, spoke first. His kingdom had been devastated by the war, and though Zaratha's forces had been defeated, the scars were deep. "The war is over," Erinda said, his voice deep and gravelly. "But there are still those among our people who thirst for power. Erindrath's death may have shattered his army, but the seeds of discontent still exist. It is only a matter of time before a new threat emerges." Queen Isolde of Osmora, a fierce and independent ruler whose lands had been hit hard by Zaratha's invasion, nodded gravely. "I agree, the peace is fragile. What we need now is unity, something that has been sorely lacking for generations." Serafini raised a hand to quiet the murmurs in the room. "We have suffered enough under the weight of war. If we are to rebuild, we must rebuild together. I have sent envoys to the free cities of the East. We will unite our kingdoms through trade, knowledge, and shared protection. But most of all, we must unite our hearts." Elysia Stormburn, ever the pragmatist, spoke next. "I have worked with the mages of all the kingdoms, and the elemental forces have stabilized for now. But there is still an unrest that lingers in the deeper magics. The balance of the elements was disrupted by the war, and there are whispers of something darker beneath the surface. It may not come from an army, but from the very land itself." Seraphine's brow furrowed, concern creeping into her voice. What do you mean? The world was burned by the phoenix's flame. Yes, Elysia replied, but it was not only the people who suffered. The earth itself, the spirit of Erinda, was scarred by the conflict. There are places where the land refuses to heal, where old magic stirs. If we are not careful, the peace we are fighting to build could unravel from within. As the council session drew to a close, Seraphine's thoughts remained clouded by the ominous warning. She could not ignore the sense that something greater was at play, something far beyond the politics of kingdoms and the petty struggles for power. Late that night, as she walked through the palace gardens, she felt it an ancient, stirring power pulsing beneath her feet. She knelt, her fingers brushing the cool earth, and the connection was immediate. It was a whisper, a call soft and distant but unmistakable. The land itself seemed to be speaking to her, urging her to listen, to understand. Serafini knew that her journey was far from over. The land, her people, and the very balance of magic required something more. She had a responsibility not just to the people of Solara, but to the very world itself. At that moment, a figure appeared from the shadows, stepping silently toward her, Dorian. Serafini, his voice was soft but strong, and it carried a weight of understanding. He had been with her, fighting beside her, and his sacrifice had ensured their survival. Now, standing before her, mortal but still the man she loved, Dorian was a reminder of everything they had overcome. "I heard your thoughts," he said. "The land speaks to you, doesn't it?" Serafini nodded. "It does, but I don't understand. The phoenix is gone, and yet the land calls to me as if it still seeks something. As if something has not yet been finished." Dorian kneeled beside her, his eyes filled with both understanding and concern. Perhaps the phoenix's flame did not die with the battle. Maybe it is still within us, within you. You think Seraphine's voice trailed off, the possibility of it forming in her mind. The phoenix wasn't just a creature of fire, it was a symbol of rebirth. Could it be that the phoenix's power, its essence, still lingers in the world? And if so, what does it want from us? The two of them stared out into the darkened horizon, where the faintest glimmer of light appeared a sign of the new dawn that was coming, but perhaps one more challenging than they had expected. A new force was rising in the land, not one of destruction, but one of balance and ancient magic that had been forgotten, lying dormant in the deepest corners of the world. The next day, Serafini called a council of the wisest and most powerful mages and seers from across Erinda. Together, they studied the ancient texts and prophecies, piecing together the scattered clues about the phoenix's true power. What they discovered was both terrifying and enlightening. The phoenix had not simply been a creature of flame, but a guardian of balance, a keeper of the harmony between life, death, and magic. But the land had been warped by war, and the phoenix's flame had burned through more than just the bodies of its enemies. It had disrupted the balance of the world itself. The earth, the skies, and the very elements had been thrown into disarray, and now the land was calling for restoration. Serafini knew what she had to do. She could not let the world spiral into chaos again. She would need to journey beyond the borders of the known world to the sacred flame, the place where the phoenix had first been born. There she would seek to heal the earth, to restore the balance between fire and earth, between magic and life. And so, with a heavy heart and a firm resolve, Serafini prepared to leave Solara once more, with Dorian and their most trusted companions at her side. The world was not finished with them yet. The flame of the phoenix had risen once more, but its rebirth was not just the end, it was the beginning of something far greater. A new journey awaited them, one that would take them deep into the heart of the Forgotten Lands, where the very foundations of magic were rooted. and where they would face an ancient power one that had long been buried, but was now beginning to stir once again. The Phoenix's ascent was not over, it had only just begun.